Imagine being handed this massive 500-page legal document.
Oh, yeah. It is completely overwhelming.
Right. And you are told you have exactly 3 days to vote on the entire future of your organization. But here is the catch.
There is always a catch.
Always. Half of the most critical decisions, I mean, things like how your local leader can be fired, where your specific financial contributions are going, who investigates major institutional bankruptcies, and even how your foundational texts are interpreted well. All of that is going to be bundled into a single silent vote before you even have a chance to reach the microphone.
It sounds wild, but welcome to the reality of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Convention.
Yeah, welcome to the procedural powerhouse known as Omnibus A.
It is an incredibly intense scenario, but it is exactly what every lay and pastoral delegate is going to face when they step onto the convention floor in Phoenix, Arizona in 2026.
You're there to represent your local congregation,
Yeah.
Want to do the work of the church.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the sheer volume of the procedural machinery, I mean, it can make you feel like you are just trying to survive this schedule rather than actually actively participating in governance.
And that is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. So if you are a delegate, whether you're a pastor who has been to 5 conventions or maybe a layperson who works in logistics or accounting, and this is your very first time, your job isn't to read every single word in that massive convention workbook.
Right. No one can read all of that.
It's to find the signal in the noise. So today, our specific mission is to cut through that noise and look at one of the most powerful and, frankly, easily misunderstood mechanisms of the entire event.
Omnibus Resolution A.
Yes.
It is the ultimate tool for parliamentary efficiency. But as we were going to unpack today, efficiency is not always neutral.
Very true.
So the guiding lens we want to provide for you today as you look at Omnibus A is a very specific question. For every single item inside this bundle, you really need to ask yourself a question. Does placing this item in Omnibus A help the Synod responsibly serve congregations and mission fields through orderly referral? Or does it hide an issue that actually deserves direct convention deliberation for the sake of transparency, doctrine, or trust?
That is a core tension right there. Does this tool serve the church, or does it, sweep things under the rug?
Exactly.
And to really unpack that, I want to set a framework before we even look at the documents. We need a standard to evaluate these overtures.
We do. And the standard we are using today relies on a few core principles. First, kingdom over castle.
I love that. Kingdom over castle.
Right. Are we prioritizing the outward kingdom-focused mission of the gospel, or are we just fortifying the institutional castle of the Synod?
Which happens a lot in big organizations.
Oh, all the time. Second, we want to look for low control and high accountability.
Okay, low control, high accountability.
Yes. And third, and honestly maybe the most important, we must constantly remember that the Synod exists to serve the local congregations, not the other way around.
Right. The entire national structure only exists to support the local ministry, the local pastor, the local school, and that local layperson out in the mission field.
Exactly.
So, kingdom over castle, it perfectly frames what we are about to do. But before we get into the actual meat of the 2026 overtures, I feel like we need to do a little bit of level setting.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, for the lay delegates who maybe don't spend their weekends reading Robert's Rules of Order, we really need to understand the actual machinery of these omnibus resolutions. Because if you don't understand the mechanism, you can't use the tool.
That is absolutely correct. Let's start with the basics. What is an overture?
Right. Good place to start.
In the LCMS, an overture is essentially a formal proposal. It's a request submitted by a congregation, maybe a district or a board, asking the National Convention to take a specific action.
Like asking to change a bylaw or clarify a theological position.
Exactly. Or even launch a new mission initiative. And by the time you get to Phoenix, there are hundreds of them.
Yeah, and it is mathematically impossible to give 1,000 delegates a microphone to debate 300 different proposals over the course of a few days.
The convention would literally last until Thanksgiving.
Nobody wants that.
No. And that is why floor committees utilize omnibus resolutions. In your convention materials, specifically in a document called Today's Business, you are going to see 3 main omnibus groupings.
Okay, lay them out for us.
Omnibus A, Omnibus B, and Omnibus C. Let's clear the easy ones out of the way first.
That's good.
Omnibus C is essentially the thank you file. It groups together overtures of thanksgiving, encouragement, and recognition.
Oh, I see. So if a congregation submits an overture saying, We want the convention to formally thank God for 150 years of black ministry or 130 years of deaf ministry. That goes into Omnibus C.
You've got it. It's beautiful, it's vital to acknowledge, but it's not something that requires 3 hours of contentious parliamentary debate.
Right. You bundle them together, the convention votes yes to adopt the resolution, and everyone gives thanks.
Exactly. Then you have Omnibus B.
Okay, what's B?
When a floor committee places an overture in Omnibus B, they are essentially saying, the Synod has already spoken on this.
Ah, so it's declining an overture based on a past convention action.
Right. It is an affirmation of the status quo. The question has been asked and answered previously.
Okay, got it. So C is thank you, and B is asked and answered. Which brings us to the heavyweight, Omnibus A.
Yes, the heavyweight.
Yeah.
This is the one that really requires our attention today. Omnibus A is formally titled Responsibility Assigned to Others.
Responsibility assigned to others. Okay.
And here is the most crucial mechanical fact you must understand as a delegate. When you vote to adopt Omnibus A, you are not adopting the overtures inside of it.
Let's pause and make sure that is crystal clear.
Yeah.
If I vote yes on Omnibus A, I am not voting yes on the actual proposals inside it.
Correct. You are not voting to approve the content, the theology, or the policy changes requested in those documents. You are voting to wash your hands of floor debate and assign the responsibility for those issues to a specific group.
Okay, so you are routing them to a named board, an office, an individual, or a commission.
Exactly. And depending on what authority that receiving body actually has, they might study it, they might respond, they might implement a policy, or, and this is key, they might just quietly decline to take any action at all.
Wow. So if you're trying to wrap your head around Omnibus A, don't think of it as a vote on the issues. Think of it as a giant corporate mailroom routing system.
I love that analogy.
Right, like a box of 50 different complex problems comes into the mailroom. The convention floor looks at the box and says, well, we don't have the time or the specialized expertise to open every single envelope. So they just slap a routing sticker on each one and ship them off to the HR department, the legal department, the theology department, and so on.
That is a perfect analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And to be completely fair to the process, Omnibus A is standard, necessary parliamentary efficiency.
You have to have it.
You do. You simply cannot debate highly technical or deeply administrative overtures on the floor. I mean, if an overture asks for a statistical study on homeschool demographics within the Synod, or asks for the development of a specific Sunday school curriculum for extremely small rural congregations.
Routing that to the Office of National Mission makes perfect sense.
Exactly. The convention floor cannot write a Sunday school curriculum via an open microphone. You need the mailroom to send that to the educational experts.
I totally get the need for the mailroom, but here's where my radar goes up.
Oh.
What happens when the mailroom routes a complaint about a specific department directly back to that exact same department?
Yes.
Like, if I'm a delegate, how do I tell the difference between an issue that is genuinely just too technical for the floor versus an issue that is being quietly swept under the rug by an administration that doesn't want to deal with it publicly?
That is the exact tension. And that is why you have to evaluate the referral recipient.
Who is getting the mail?
Right. You have to look at the power dynamics. Does the referral create accountability and reporting, or does it risk centralizing responsibility without any clear benefit to the local congregation?
So if an overture touches on, say, major bylaw changes or ecclesiastical supervision, university bankruptcies, legal transparency,
You as a delegate have to ask if that topic requires public clarity.
and if I decide it does require public clarity, let's say I'm looking at Omnibus A and I see a massive theological or financial issue buried in there, do I just have to accept it?
Absolutely not. And here is the procedural power you hold. It only takes a majority vote to pull an item from Omnibus A for separate consideration.
Wait, really? Just a majority vote?
Just a majority vote. If you see something in that bundle that demands the voice of the church, you can go to a microphone, make a motion to pull that specific overture from the omnibus, and if the majority of the floor agrees with you, that item is removed from the bundle and scheduled for its own dedicated debate and vote.
That is incredibly empowering. It means the delegate isn't just a rubber stamp for the floor committees. Not at all. You actually have the ability to say, hold on, let's look at that one closer.
You do.
So let's do exactly that right now. Let's pull out our magnifying glass and act as a research assistant for the delegates.
Let's do it.
We are going to look at the actual contents of Omnibus A for the 2026 convention. And for each major item, we are going to break it down systematically. What is it? What is the proposed action? Who is receiving it? And what is the strongest argument for leaving it in the bundle versus pulling it out?
That is a great game plan. Let's start at the most foundational level of the LCMS.
Which is?
The local congregation, the pastoral call, and the doctrine that shapes them both. Everything the Synod does should flow from and support the word and sacrament ministry happening at the local altar and pulpit.
Exactly. So let's look at Omnibus A, Item Overture 514.
Okay.
The title is, To Study How to Amend Practice of Issuing Divine Calls to Positions Not in Direct Service of Proclamation of Gospel and Administration of Sacraments.
Quite a mouthful.
It is. The source document places this in today's Business Issue 1, page 51, and the named referral recipient is the Commission on Theology and Church Relations, or the CTCR.
Okay, let's break this down into a plain language summary. This overture is fundamentally questioning our definition of church work.
How so?
Well, over the last several decades, the Synod has expanded who receives a formal divine call. It used to be strictly pastors preaching and administering the sacraments.
Right.
Then it expanded to teachers, then to directors of Christian education, and now we have called workers in heavily administrative roles, specialized educational roles, or even synodical bureaucracy.
So what is the overture asking?
It is asking to pump the brakes. It wants a theological study to figure out how to reserve calls specifically for roles that properly fall within the biblical pastoral office.
For our lay delegates who work in the corporate world, we really need to pause here and explain why this matters so much. A divine call isn't just an employment contract. In LCMS theology, it carries profound spiritual weight. It's the belief that God himself, through the local congregation, is placing this specific person in this specific role.
That's right.
It comes with different tax implications, different housing allowances, but more importantly, a completely different spiritual authority and job security than a normal at-will employment contract.
Yes.
So when an overture asks to restrict who gets one, we aren't just talking about HR titles. We are debating the theological definition of ministry.
That is exactly right. It touches on the very nature of the church.
So what is the proposed omnibus action here?
If this stays in Omnibus A, the convention would not be adopting the overture itself. The convention would be referring it to the CTCR.
Okay, and then what?
The CTCR would then study the doctrinal implications and potentially propose bylaw or constitutional amendments for a future convention to consider.
Okay, let's do a referral recipient analysis, CTCR. On the surface, sending a massive theological question to the Commission on Theology seems like a total no-brainer.
Yeah, they are the theologians.
Why wouldn't we just leave this in the omnibus?
The strong case for leaving it in Omnibus A is that the CTCR is absolutely the proper recipient for deep theological studies. They have the academic rigor and the mandate to issue these kinds of reports.
Right, you want experts on this.
Exactly.
Yep.
The theology of the divine call is incredibly complex, rooted deeply in the Lutheran confessions. Hasty floor amendments on the theology of the call could create massive unintended consequences.
What kind of consequences?
Imagine a delegate offering a quick amendment on the floor that accidentally strips the divine call from thousands of faithfully serving Lutheran school teachers across the country.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be chaos.
It would. You need specialized review.
I see that.
Yeah.
You don't want to do theological surgery with a chainsaw on the convention floor.
Good way to put it.
But I have to push back a little here, thinking about the local congregation. If we refer this to a study committee, we are essentially kicking the can down the road to the 2029 convention, or maybe even 2032.
That's the risk.
If congregations and districts are confused right now about who should and shouldn't receive a divine call, like if we have administrative bloat where people are getting calls just for the tax benefits, does referral actually help the church in the short term? Or does it just leave workers and congregations in limbo?
And that is the delegate's dilemma right there. Is the theological safety of a CTCR study worth the delay in practical, on-the-ground clarity?
Right.
Furthermore, the referral recipient analysis reveals a limitation here. The CTCR has the authority to study, but they cannot change the bylaws themselves. They can only report back.
Oh, I see.
So referring this doesn't solve the problem. It only initiates a multi-year academic process.
So a delegate deeply concerned about the dilution of the pastoral office right now might look at Omnibus A and say, no, the convention needs to take a stand on this immediately, not read a white paper about it in 3 years.
Exactly. This transition perfectly highlights the tension between national administration and local ministry.
Yeah, it really does.
So let's look at another cluster of overtures that deals directly with how ministry is policed. This is highly relevant to anyone who has ever used the internet, which is all of us. Let's look at Omnibus A Items Overture 1002 and 1003.
Ah, yes, the Internet overtures.
Right.
So Overture 1002 is titled To Develop Guidelines for Ecclesiastical Supervision of Internet Accusations, and 1003 is to address use of named or anonymous social media accounts to create strife and division within the church.
And these are slated to be referred to the Council of Presidents or the COP.
Okay, let's do the plain language summary. In our modern digital age, anyone with a smartphone can post an accusation about a pastor, a teacher, a district president, or a synodical official.
Unfortunately, yes.
Sometimes these are anonymous whistleblowers exposing genuine financial or moral failures, but sometimes they're just angry individuals using Twitter or blogs to slander faithful workers and cause absolute chaos in a local parish.
It happens all the time.
So these overtures are asking for guidelines. How should church leaders handle these online accusations? And how do you apply church discipline to someone using social media to cause division?
Let's talk about the proposed omnibus action. The convention would not be adopting these guidelines right now.
Okay.
The convention would be referring the entire concept to the Council of Presidents. The COP would study the issue and potentially develop supervisory guidelines for how to handle internet behavior.
Let's analyze that referral recipient, the Council of Presidents.
Right.
That's made up of the Synod president, the regional vice presidents, and all the district presidents.
Correct. They are the men explicitly responsible for ecclesiastical supervision. That is our church jargon for overseeing the doctrine and life of the workers.
They are the ones who have to step in when a pastor is accused of something or when a congregation is in conflict.
Exactly. So administratively, if you want a uniform pastoral practice across the country for handling Facebook mobs, the COP is the logical recipient.
I understand the administrative logic, but let's apply our kingdom over castle lens here.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm reading the text, and I have to admit I'm stuck. We are talking about internet accusations and online whistleblowers who are often critiquing the institution itself.
Yes.
If we refer this to the COP, aren't we asking the exact people who are most often the targets of these online critiques to write the rules on what critiques are allowed?
That's a fair point.
Are we essentially asking the referees to write the rule book on how the fans are allowed to yell at them?
That is a very sharp critique, and it cuts to the heart of the low-control, high-accountability framework. The tension here is immense.
How so?
Well, on one hand, you have a legitimate need to protect the vulnerable. District presidents spend countless hours dealing with the very real, very devastating pastoral damage caused by anonymous online slander.
Right, it's terrible.
It destroys ministries, it ruins reputations, and it is a genuine crisis that violates the Eighth Commandment. I mean, we are supposed to put the best construction on everything, not post rumors on a blog.
I completely agree that digital mobs are destructive. But the flip side is transparency.
Exactly. The flip side is that referral to the COP risks centralizing responsibility without giving local congregations a say in how terms like internet strife or division are defined.
Yeah, who defines what constitutes a divisive post?
Exactly. If a layperson discovers that a synodical entity is misusing funds, and they post the documents online under a pseudonym because they're afraid of retaliation, is that creating strife? Or is that necessary whistleblowing?
If the COP gets to define those terms behind closed doors, there is a massive risk of institutional self-protection.
There is.
They could easily create policies that local congregations feel infringe on free speech or that shield leaders from legitimate accountability. It might start feeling less like pastoral care and more like a corporate non-disparagement clause.
And that is the exact reason a delegate might move to pull this from Omnibus A.
So what's the case for leaving it in?
The strongest case for leaving it in the omnibus is that internet policy changes so rapidly, and applying discipline requires such nuanced case-by-case pastoral application that you simply cannot draft a synod-wide social media policy on a convention floor.
True, it would be rigid and obsolete in 6 months.
Exactly. But a delegate might pull it to ensure that the convention adds a mandate saying, yes, the COP can draft the guidelines, but those guidelines must explicitly protect whistleblowers and be fully transparent to the congregations.
We just saw how the COP policing itself on internet rules requires an incredible amount of blind trust from local parishes.
It really does.
But let's take that exact same trust us mechanism and apply it to something even more severe, the actual termination of a pastor's career.
Okay.
Let's stick with the COP for a second, because overtures 1024 and 1025 are also headed their way.
These are critical. To request Council of Presidents to clarify circumstances of called worker removal, or resignation and removal from the official roster.
Oh.
And yes, they are referred to the COP.
Plain language summary time. A local congregation calls a pastor. Sometimes things go terribly wrong. There is a moral failure or false doctrine or a complete breakdown of the relationship, and the pastor needs to be removed.
It's tragic, but it happens.
But right now, the rules on how that happens, when someone can be forced to resign and when they are officially stripped of their status on the Synod's roster, meaning they can never receive a call again, can feel incredibly opaque.
Very much so.
These overtures are begging for clear, consistent, legally and pastorally sound policies so that a district in California handles a removal the exact same way a district in Ohio does.
The proposed action is to ship this to the COP. The COP would study the circumstances of removal and propose guidelines. The convention would not be adopting any new protections or definitions right now.
Let's do the recipient analysis. And I feel like we are going to hit the exact same closed-loop problem we just talked about with the Internet overtures.
We are. To be fair, the COP holds delegated authority over the roster. Developing a uniform manual for worker removal involves complex ecclesiastical due process, employment law, and sensitive pastoral care.
Right.
You cannot draft a legally watertight termination policy with 1,000 people debating at a microphone. The COP is the body that actually has to execute these removals, so they possess the procedural knowledge.
Wait, hold on. The COP is the body that has to execute these removals.
Yes.
That is the red flag right there. Leaving this entirely to the COP means that the very people who execute worker removals are the ones defining the rules for worker removals. Where is the check and balance?
That is the crux of the issue. Remember our framework. The Synod serves the congregations. It is the local congregation, not the district president, that issues the divine call.
The local congregation is the one paying a salary, sitting in the pews, and receiving the ministry.
Exactly. If a congregation feels that a district president can swoop in, arbitrarily define the rules, and force their pastor to resign or strip him from the roster without a transparent, universally agreed-upon process,
The trust between the local church and the National Synod completely fractures.
it does.
So if you are a delegate and you believe the local church needs a say in how pastoral calls are terminated, you might stand up and pull 1024 and 1025 out of Omnibus A.
You might?
You'd be saying, no, the convention representing the congregations needs to define the boundaries of when a pastor can be removed. We cannot just let the COP write their own rule book for how they wield their power.
Precisely. You would be demanding that the process be defined in the open light of the convention, not in a closed-door COP meeting.
Okay, we've spent a lot of time on ecclesiastical supervision, but if the pastoral call is the soul of the Synod's structure, then financial and legal transparency is its nervous system.
That's a great way to look at it.
When the nervous system is shocked, the whole body feels it. And recent crises in the LCMS have sparked several overtures demanding intense financial accountability. This brings us to Omnibus A items overture 728 and 729.
Yes. This brings us to the crisis at Concordia University, Ann Arbor. Overture 728 is to conduct a project post-mortem examination of Concordia University, Ann Arbor.
And 729.
And 729 is to request transparency from Concordia University, Wisconsin, Ann Arbor. They are referred to the Synod Board of Directors and the Concordia University System Board of Directors.
Let's give a plain language summary because this is incredibly painful for a lot of people in the church.
It really is.
Recently, the Ann Arbor campus of the Concordia University system faced a massive, sudden financial crisis that led to drastic operational changes, program cuts, and severe heartache for students, faculty, and alumni.
Yeah, it sent shockwaves through the Synod.
People are hurting, and they want answers. These overtures are requesting a formal, transparent investigation, a post-mortem into the financial decisions, the administration, and the oversight that led to this disaster. They want full disclosure to the church.
The proposed omnibus action is referral. The convention would not be mandating that independent investigation right now. It is referring the requests to the Synod Board of Directors, the POD, and the Concordia University System Board of Directors.
And what are they supposed to do?
The boards are essentially directed to review their own policies on transparency and report back.
Wait.
What is critical here for the delegate to know is that the available documents do not explicitly show what the receiving body must disclose immediately after referral.
Let's do the recipient analysis. I'm sorry, but this sounds exactly like asking the bank manager to audit the vault after the money has gone missing, and then trusting them to just mail us a summary of their feelings on transparency later.
From a purely organizational standpoint, you can absolutely understand the frustration. It looks like a massive conflict of interest.
We are referring a request for an investigation of a crisis to the exact boards that were overseeing the institution during the crisis. How does that create accountability?
Well, we have to look at the strongest case for leaving this in Omnibus A. The referral recipient possesses the actual fiduciary data.
Okay.
Investigating university finances is not a simple matter of looking at a checkbook. You are dealing with highly sensitive donor records, strict federal accreditation requirements, massive endowment restrictions, and potential legal liabilities.
Sure, it's complicated.
You cannot put a university's confidential financial spreadsheet on the projector screens in Phoenix and ask 1,000 delegates to audit it. It is financially and legally reckless. The BODs have a legal fiduciary duty to protect the institution from further harm or lawsuits.
I understand fiduciary duty. You have to protect the institution legally. But here is the conflict. Fiduciary duty versus church transparency.
Right.
The board of directors has a legal duty to protect the corporate entity. But the synod, the church, serves the congregations. It is the congregations who fund the synod, who pour millions of offering dollars into these schools, who send their youth to these universities.
That's true.
If the corporate entity fails, the church bears the spiritual and emotional cost.
That is the exact kingdom over castle dynamic, is keeping the financial details quiet, protecting the kingdom's witness by preventing legal disaster. Or is it just protecting the institutional castle from embarrassment and accountability?
A delegate must decide if referring this to the BOD actually creates accountability, or if it merely moves a highly emotional, highly painful issue off the convention floor so the institution doesn't have to face the music in public.
A delegate might pull this to demand a third-party, truly independent financial audit that reports directly to the congregations, bypassing the BOD entirely.
And that exact same dynamic protecting the legal castle versus informing the church applies to the next item on our list. Overture 818.
Yes, to encourage transparency and accountability in legal judgments and settlements. This is tied to the recently concluded hot chalk litigation, which involved a massive lawsuit regarding an online education enabler used by one of our universities.
Plain language summary. When the synod or its universities get sued and they end up paying out massive legal settlements or judgments, the church usually doesn't hear about the specific dollar amounts.
Very rarely.
This overture requests policies ensuring that when the synod pays out these legal settlements, the financial and legal outcomes are shared transparently with the church.
And if it stays in Omnibus A, the proposed action is to refer it to the Synod Board of Directors and Legal Counsel to conduct a legal and governance study.
So again, the people who manage the lawsuits and draft the non-disclosure agreements are being asked to study whether they should tell us about the non-disclosure agreements.
That is the referral recipient analysis in a nutshell.
Right.
Now, what is the best case for Omnibus A? It comes down to the mechanics of modern litigation. Legal settlements almost always include strict non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs.
True.
If the convention floor were to pass a resolution forcing the immediate disclosure of past settlements, it could instantly cause the synod to breach legally binding contracts. The synod could face further legal liability and incur massive financial penalties. Legal counsel and the BOD hold the authority over litigation because they have the specialized expertise to manage that immense legal risk without bankrupting the church.
I get how NDAs work, but let's trace the money. If the synod is paying out multi-million-dollar settlements, whether that money comes from insurance policies, which are funded by premiums, or from synodical reserves, that is ultimately money that originated from the local congregations.
Yes, the congregations fund the synod.
Don't the people in the pews who put money in the offering plate on Sunday morning have a moral right to know the financial liabilities of their church body?
That is the counter-argument that would drive a delegate to a microphone. This referral risks hiding an issue that deserves direct deliberation.
If the church is facing significant legal settlements, the delegates might feel that referring the request for transparency to the lawyers is just a bureaucratic way to indefinitely bury the numbers.
A delegate might pull this to demand that a policy of financial disclosure, even if it has to be aggregated or heavily anonymized to respect existing NDAs, be codified by the convention itself rather than left to the discretion of the board.
It really comes down to trust. Do you trust the board to manage the liability and report what they safely can, or do you feel the institution has lost that trust and needs the convention to force the issue?
Exactly.
Let's look at one more financial item, but this one hits much closer to home for the average pastor and the small rural congregation. Omnibus A, Items Overture 804 and 805.
To amend bylaws to ensure sustainability of Concordia Plan services by its working with other church bodies, and to stabilize the cost of benefits.
And where are these going?
These are referred to the Board of Directors for Concordia Plan Services, the Synod BOD, and the Commission on Constitutional Matters.
Plain language summary, we're talking about health insurance and pensions for church workers. Over the last decade, the cost of Concordia Plan Services, which provides these benefits, has skyrocketed. It is crushing small congregations. These overtures aim to address those rising costs by amending bylaws to allow Concordia plans to partner with other church bodies, essentially creating larger risk pools to stabilize the premiums.
The proposed action is that the Convention does not adopt the overtures or change the bylaws. The Convention refers them to the CPS BOD, the Synod BOD, and the CCM.
Okay, recipient analysis. I have to admit, I can completely see why this is an Omnibus A. Modifying multi-employer church benefit plans has to be insanely complicated.
It is arguably the most technically complex issue the Synod faces. You are dealing with intense federal tax law, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA, actuarial science, and strict fiduciary compliance.
That's a lot.
To understand why it's so expensive, you have to look at the mechanism. Think about a multi-employer church plan. It is essentially a massive risk pool.
Right.
But unlike a growing tech company bringing in thousands of healthy 25-year-olds, the LCMS has an aging worker demographic. You have pastors and teachers retiring, living longer, requiring more medical care, while the number of young, healthy workers entering the system to pay into the pool is shrinking. The actuarial math gets brutal.
Right. You cannot rewrite an actuarial table via an open microphone on the convention floor. You need the quants and the lawyers to figure out if partnering with another church body is even legally possible under ERISA.
Exactly. These boards hold the complex regulatory and financial data required to even attempt restructuring pension and health plans. Leaving it in Omnibus A ensures the experts handle the technical realities.
And this is a massive but, while you can't rewrite the actuarial table on the floor, the small parish in rural Nebraska is the one currently paying the premium.
Very true.
A parish of 40 people might be looking at a healthcare premium for their pastor that consumes nearly half of their entire church budget. It is an existential crisis for local ministry. If this is simply referred, the participants, the pastors, the teachers, the congregations do not get any immediate changes. The crushing cost of benefits remains unaddressed by the convention as a whole.
That is the painful reality of this referral. A delegate might look at this and say, yes, the technical details of the bylaws must go to the actuaries. But the convention cannot just silently pass this off.
Simply referring it might feel like the convention is ignoring the financial pain of the local parish.
A delegate might pull this out to mandate a specific timeline for a solution, or to vote on a resolution that publicly declares benefit cost stabilization the absolute highest financial priority of the Synod.
It's the difference between referring a problem for a quiet study and demanding a solution with a loud public deadline.
Well said.
Okay, we've talked about the local pastor, we've talked about the universities, and the financial mechanics of the Synod. For our last segment, I want to zoom out to the macro level. The actual overarching structure of the LCMS itself and its overall trajectory in the world. Let's look at Omnibus A, Items Overtures 912, 913, and 914.
These are major structural overtures. The titles are To Restructure Mission Boards and To Revisit 2010 Restructuring. They're slated to be referred to the Office of the President and the Synod Board of Directors.
Let's do some historical plain language summary here for those who might not remember or who are new delegates. 2010 was a seismic shift in how the LCMS operates, right?
It was a massive restructuring. Prior to 2010, the Synod had various program boards that operated with a degree of independence.
Okay.
The 2010 restructuring significantly altered that, centralizing a lot of authority, changing how mission boards, national and international, operate, how they are governed, and how authority flows directly from the national office and the Synod president.
So these new overtures are asking the convention to evaluate and potentially undo or significantly alter those 2010 changes because some feel it took too much control away from local districts and congregations.
And the proposed omnibus action is to send this to the Office of the President and the Board of Directors. The convention would not be voting to restructure anything today.
Correct. And, notably, the available documents do not show what the receiving body must do after the referral. There is no mandate for action.
Recipient analysis time. We are taking an overture that explicitly asks if the current centralized power structure is working, and we are referring it to the current centralized power structure to evaluate themselves.
That is the exact structural tension. Referring this to the Office of the President and the BOD tasks the current administration with evaluating its own administrative framework.
That seems like a guaranteed way to ensure nothing changes.
Well, let's look at the best case for the omnibus. Completely restructuring the Synod's mission boards requires massive logistical planning, legal entity restructuring, and budget reallocation.
You can't just wing that.
No. You cannot draft a new national governance structure on the convention floor. It involves the board of directors and highly technical structural bylaws. Avoiding a chaotic, poorly planned floor fight over governance is the main benefit of the referral.
But if we apply our kingdom over castle and low control, high accountability lenses,
then the referral looks very different. For delegates who feel that the 2010 restructuring built a stronger institutional castle at the expense of local congregational input, this referral is viewed as burying a necessary debate.
right. Did the 2010 restructuring actually help the Synod serve congregations in mission fields better by streamlining operations? Or did it just create a bureaucracy that is harder for congregations to hold accountable?
By referring this to Omnibus A, the convention avoids a messy political floor fight, yes, but in avoiding the fight, the convention completely gives up its chance to actually mandate reform.
Leaving it in Omnibus A essentially ensures the structure will remain exactly as it is. You're voting on whether to even have a conversation about who holds the power in the church.
Let's look at the ultimate result of all this structure, the mission itself. Overture 107.
To study and to make recommendations to stop and reverse long decline in Synod membership is referred to the Office of National Mission, or the O&M.
Plain language summary. The LCMS, like many American church bodies, is facing a demographic cliff. Our baptismal birth rate is lower than our death rate. We have a long-term, ongoing loss of baptized members.
It's a sad reality.
This overture is asking for a dedicated study and actionable strategies to address this existential crisis.
The proposed action is to refer it to the O&M for study and recommendations. The convention would not be adopting a specific strategy.
Now, in terms of recipient analysis, this actually seems like a very faithful referral.
It does.
The O&M is literally the office tasked with domestic outreach, revitalization, and church planting. They have the demographic data, the researchers, and the staff. Sending it to them gets the issue to the exact body responsible for it.
It is a faithful referral in an administrative sense.
Yeah.
The convention floor cannot vote a church growth strategy into existence.
Right.
You can't pass a parliamentary resolution that magically puts people in the pews. It requires specialized cultural analysis and resource development, which the O&M is designed to do. Furthermore, it might duplicate work the O&M is already doing behind the scenes.
So if it's the right place for it, why would a delegate ever pull it out of Omnibus A?
Because of the need for public confession and prioritization.
Say more about that.
The decline in membership is an existential crisis for the kingdom's witness. If this is quietly referred in Omnibus A, it is handled with administrative efficiency, but there is no public convention moment where the Synod as a whole stops, acknowledges the demographic reality, laments the losses, and publicly commits to a unified strategy of outward witness.
Wow. So a delegate might pull this not because they think the O&M is the wrong place for the study, but because they believe the convention itself needs to spend an hour talking about the most important issue facing the church, the loss of souls and the need for evangelism, rather than spending all 3 days just debating bylaws and corporate structure.
Exactly. Pulling it out elevates the conversation from an administrative task to a public, synod-wide priority.
That is a brilliant strategic use of the delegate's voice. We have time for one more specific overture before we wrap this up. Let's look at Omnibus A Item Overture 542.
To amend bylaw 3.3.1.1.2c to designate President's Director of Church Relations as his primary representative for ecclesiastical relations with other church bodies, referred to the Office of the President and the Commission on Constitutional Matters.
Okay, that is a mouthful of bylaw numbers. What does it actually mean in practice?
In plain language, it seeks to officially change the bylaws to make a specific staff member, the Director of Church Relations, the primary representative for interacting with other global church bodies.
Okay.
Currently, the Synod President holds this authority and often handles it through his own ad hoc delegations, deciding who goes where to talk to partner churches in Africa, Europe, or Asia.
The proposed action is referral. The convention does not adopt the bylaw change. It refers it to the president and the CCM.
Recipient analysis. Amending bylaws requires precise legal drafting and constitutional review by the CCM to ensure the new language doesn't conflict with other sections of the handbook.
Right, makes sense.
You don't want delegates rewriting constitutional bylaws on the fly. So procedurally, it belongs in a referral for review.
But here's the catch. This touches directly on the flow of authority of the Synod president. It is an attempt to regulate how the president exercises his power in global bridge building, and we are referring it to the president.
Precisely. It entirely removes the delegate's ability to mandate how the LCMS handles its ecumenical relations.
Wow.
If delegates believe the current system of ad hoc delegations is hurting relationships with partner churches around the world, referring this to the president effectively means asking the president to decide if he wants to voluntarily give up some of his direct control.
So if a delegate believes the church needs a dedicated, bylaw-mandated diplomat to build bridges consistently, they must pull this from Omnibus A to force the convention to actually vote on the bylaw change. This has been an absolutely incredible deep dive. We've gone from the deep theology of the divine call to the modern nightmare of managing internet mobs, to university financial crises, actuarial death spirals, and the very structure of the mission boards.
It's a lot.
And all of these massive church-altering issues are sitting in one single bundle called Omnibus A.
It is a staggering amount of church business.
Yeah.
And it brings us right back to you, the delegate sitting in Phoenix.
Yeah.
You have a finite amount of time. You cannot debate every issue. Omnibus A is a tool. It clears the docket of necessary but purely administrative tasks. It lets the actuaries handle the pensions and the constitutional lawyers handle the formatting so the convention can focus on the big picture.
But used poorly or used without delegates paying attention.
Used poorly, it is a massive rug under which controversies are swept. It becomes a procedural mechanism to avoid difficult public conversations about accountability, transparency, and the balance of power between the national institution and the local congregation.
So what does this all mean for you as you pack your bags? The delegate's dilemma is very real. Remember the mechanism. Pulling an item from Omnibus A requires a majority vote.
Right.
You have to go to a microphone and convince half the room that the issue you care about is worth their precious convention time.
Which means you must ask yourself for every single item, is the efficiency of the omnibus worth the cost of public clarity?
That's the big question.
If the issue is a technical bylaw formatting correction, the answer is yes, take the efficiency. But if the issue involves the financial transparency of a university that your congregation's poured millions of dollars into, or the closed-door rules by which your pastor's career can be terminated, or the public handling of social media whistleblowers, you might decide that efficiency is the enemy of accountability.
Let's bring this all the way back to the beginning. We talked about walking into that convention hall and facing a 500-page blizzard of paper. It is designed to be overwhelming, whether intentionally or just by the nature of a massive, complex institution. But your job isn't to read every single word or understand every single bylaw. Your job is to remember why the structure exists in the first place.
The Synod is not an end unto itself. The institution is just scaffolding. It is scaffolding built entirely to support the local congregation's ministry of word and sacrament.
So I want to leave you, the delegate, with a final provocative thought as you prepare for this convention. If the Synod structure exists purely to serve the local congregation's outward witness to the world, what does it say about our priorities if the most critical debates about institutional accountability, removed pastors, and university finances are the ones we choose not to have in public? As you take your seat in Phoenix, look at that Omnibus A list and ask yourself, which of these items can you confidently entrust to a committee behind closed doors? And which ones absolutely demand the loud, public, messy, beautiful voice of the church?